Dr. Jila Senemar, how are you doing today?
I'm great. Thank you so much for having me today.
Oh my goodness. I am so excited. One, Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
We are recording this on day one of 2026. And the question I want to ask you out the gate, before we dive deep, is take me back to the moment you first realized you might be in perimenopause. What were you thinking or feeling at the time?
That's a great question because it takes me back quite a few years, actually, because it was in the midst of COVID that things started changing. And I really wasn't aware what was happening because it wasn't the typical, as we know, it wasn't the cycles, changing that much. I was still having my cycles regularly every month. I felt great, but something was off. It just didn't feel the same. And I couldn't pinpoint what was happening. So I started doing blood work on myself just to kind of get a baseline and see if it was my thyroid or something else. And for the first time ever, my lipid panel started looking abnormal and my LDL started rising, which that had never happened. And there really wasn't any shift or change in my medical history at that point. I was actually home more because of COVID and working out more, and actually was leaner at the time. So it didn't make sense. And my hormone levels were they're fluctuating. My FSH started creeping up, which again, I'd never, noticed that before. So I just kind of, put it aside.
Really quickly, kind of where was it for you at the time where things were shifting a little bit? Just because I want to give, any listener context. So often we're not looking at FSH until much later, but like what could we be seeing even in like early to mid perimenopause?
Well, you can notice it, which is what I noticed, was a pattern where it can be normal and then it can be elevated and then it could be normal again the next month. And this is all part of what the ovary is doing, and the, brain is
that brain, that HPO axis connection.
Exactly.
It's like telephone with a bunch of 5-year-olds,
Yeah. The brain sending the message. The ovary's just like, I don't feel like responding this month. Or, no, I'm going to take that message this month and we're going to be okay. So that's literally what happened. Over 3 to 6 months of just testing over and over again, that's where I saw the pattern in those levels. Now, in the meantime, I started developing some mood changes, basically. My oldest son was getting ready to leave for college. So that was all thrown in there. But as you know, we always discount it. Oh, we're moms. Oh, we're just stressed out. That's what it is. But I realized there was more to it because, things were changing. Then I started seeing changes in my body. The body composition was shifting a little bit and I felt more fluffy and that tire around the midsection. Although nobody could see it, I felt it in my clothes. I noticed the differences and I had always kept track of what my patients were doing. My older patients who were on different kinds of hormone regimens from other providers, because again, it wasn't in my forefront at that point. And I decided to kind of delve into it for myself. I'm like, okay, let me see, what do I need to do? Where do I need to go? And after waiting a few months to get my first appointment with a more of a holistic provider, I went and, had labs done and everything, and basically walked out with a bag full of supplements and herbal remedies to try and, help with the symptoms I was having. And I wasn't sold on it. It just didn't feel like it didn't make sense to me. But I decided to give it its due diligence, and I stayed committed to the treatment plan and did everything I was supposed to do. And I did get better in some ways, but I can't say it wasn't
hormones.
Yeah, it wasn't hormones.
It wasn't, because it's a yes and, right? Like I took some supplements today and I have an estrogen patch on and I've got
my progesterone.
Yeah.
And again, there's all these different companies that were coming out like Happy Mammoth and this and that. And I was like, oh, I'm going to try that and I'm going to buy this. And were they the end all be all? No. Did they help with some symptoms? Probably. But I needed more. And that's where I started digging in deeper. And, my deep dive at 2 a.m. on social media landed me on the Menopause Society webpage where I saw they have a textbook. I'm like, well, let me read the textbook. Maybe that'll give me answers. And then I started seeing other healthcare providers, in the field who are leading the way, the charge per se. And I was like, wait, they're saying what I'm feeling. And this isn't, okay, this is normal, but there are ways to make it better. And it's also for my own health and well-being in the long term. And that's really where my whole journey, and this is now, I want to say 5, 6 years ago, I was on the tail end. I mean, I was like mid 40s, 46 at the time. My mom was still with us. And I asked her, hey, when did you go through? And I remember she went through it earlier, like she was in her early 40s.
Wow.
Because I remember what happened to my mom was actually she skipped her period long enough where she thought she was pregnant. So she was going to have a third baby. And she was so excited. My dad was like, are you crazy? That's the last thing we need is another kid right now. You know, I was heading off to college and my brother was like in high school. My dad was like,
We're
no,
at the finish line.
he was done. And my mom was like, yeah, I think we're going to have one more. And then lo and behold, she was actually in menopause. She wasn't pregnant. And back then they started her right away on Prempro. Like it was like, yeah, you're in it. You're going to take this. You're going to be fine. And my mom was actually fine for many years until I was in residency and the WHI came out. It was 2002 that the study results were, the press release. And I'll never forget, I called up my mom and I said, you need to stop taking that because you're going to die. And she goes, but my doctor, who you know, I'm like, I know, Mom, but he's not up to date. This just came out today and you need to stop right away. And she did. She listened, but that is, I think, where her decline started was after she stopped her hormones. Fast forward a few years later into everything, if I look at all the pictures and all her symptomatology and all her disease process that, started after that, it was a downhill slope for her. And basically everything that could have happened, happened. Everything we talk about, the heart disease began. My mom was somebody who's always thin, never had a weight problem. And she just started gaining weight. She started having high blood pressure every time I would see her. And this is, again, now imagine I'm building a career. I'm having kids. I'm getting married. And we're on two separate coasts. My mom was in California and I was moving between New York and Florida. So we're not together. And every few months when I would see her, she would have a new medication added on. It was like, what are you taking now? Oh, my blood pressure's a little bit up. Oh, I need to take a diuretic. Oh, my cholesterol's up. So I want a cholesterol medication. Again, added. So heart disease was kicking in. Then came, osteopenia, back problems, needing, 4 or 5 different spine surgeries, which, you should never, ever have that many at all. And again, she just kept getting worse and worse and worse. And after her spine surgery, she ended up with a pulmonary embolism and ended up at the ER on Elquis. And like, you name it, happened. And that literally was the demise of her at the end of it. When I look back, it was all there in black and white. And I was like, how did this, how did we miss it? How did I miss it? I wasn't looking at the bigger picture. I wasn't looking at the longevity aspect of what we're talking about, which is disease prevention. We shouldn't really wait for women to get a problem and then treat it. Why not prevent it altogether? And hormones and perimenopause and menopause are at the core of it. And we are like, I was at that crossroad for myself and I was like, oh, no, I'm doing this because I don't want anything to happen. I'm fine. And I want to maintain that. I want to keep going. I want to be healthy and on and on. So that was, how I figured out where I was and what I needed to do.
Man, I'm so sorry about your mama too. And about the, the misinformation about that from that study and how, when we looked at it initially or just kind of the headlines alone, how many of us, recommended that patients come off of it, family members. I'm sure you felt that, for your mom.
Oh my gosh. It was, and we were in training and our attending came out and said, listen, you don't need to be giving hormones to anyone anymore. They'll be okay. They'll get over the symptoms and that's fine. And that's basically the training we got. And we were okay with it at the time. Imagine what do we in OB? What do? We want to be great at delivering babies. We want to be able to operate at all different levels, and I want to be a laparoscopic surgeon and then robotics came out. So that was the focus. Yes. Hormones were not the focus at all. And this thing just kind of helped push it to the side where it was like, no, you don't need it. we didn't even talk about vaginal estrogen. I didn't even know what that was until, many years later, where we're like, wait, this is like a magic cure-all. And why aren't we using it? And it doesn't even get absorbed systemically. What are we talking about? What's going on here? So a lot of self-education is, I think, where I needed to be at. And that only comes with, having that personal experience with it, where you're like, something's wrong. No one's helping me. And we're used to helping people. We're used to fixing things. I couldn't get anyone to help me. And then I kept hearing the same concerns with my patients over and over again. And I was like, there's a common thread here. And that was, kind of like what sparked the interest and, lit the fire.
Do you feel like this is one of the biggest myths of perimenopause and midlife for women? Or in your own journey and in the journey with your patients, what has been some of the biggest myths that you've wanted to dispel, knowing what you know today?
Some of the biggest myths, and the biggest one that I, sit down and I get comfortable is the breast cancer myth. If I take hormone therapy, I'm going to get breast cancer and die. That to me, I'm like, okay, we need to start from scratch with you and really get into why that doesn't hold ground anymore, why that was never the case. That never was what came out of the study. It was a whole misinterpretation around that. That's number one. And the second part is that I don't need to take anything. These symptoms will go away and I will be okay. I'll wait it out. Yes and no. Yes, you're not wrong. They will eventually abate. Yeah.
Some of them.
Some of them will go away.
Some of them won't.
Some of them won't. Some of them may worsen or turn into something else. Your hot flash, it'll calm down. But what they don't realize are the silent things that are happening internally that we're not going to see until years later. And that's the conversation I love having with my patients and opening their eyes to it and like kind of blowing their mind. You can see it. They're like, oh, what? How does a hot flash relate to heart disease? How does this have to do with that? And kind of, I lay it out for them. And then I say, now I want you to go and read up on this more. And I give them handouts and I'm like, go read this. And I give them all the resources. I said, now go and look at these books and this. And then I want you back in a few weeks to continue the conversation. And so those are the two big ones I see a lot of. And that's kind of like where I like to start with my patients.
I agree. The silent shifts. And I think, as you got a front row seat to your mom, it was those silent shifts.
Yeah, it took a few years. It wasn't right away.
No, it's never immediate. It's a developing, we just can't see it.
At all. And, a lot of different things could have been done differently had, we known better. And what was happening with her, it would have changed things quite a bit. But this is where we're at now my goal is I'm going to prevent this for as many women as possible. No one else should have to go through this if they don't want to. And as long as they're educated by me, I feel I've done my job. And that's really what we need to, I want to, and I know you do too, is offer this to women, is give them the education. Let's have a conversation. That's it.
I love this. I love this so much because, Jila, honey, you're shifting the way that you're practicing in the sense of focusing on education. This has been such a profound journey for you. And with your own patients, watching their trajectory, watching your mother's trajectory, that you want to be the change that you want to see in the world. Talk to me about that. What was the defining moment for you that you were like, I need to be one of the boots on the ground?
That came about, I want to say in 2024 for me, almost 2 years ago now, where I started, doing more education locally about these topics. Then I went to the Menopause Society meeting in person for the first time. And I was blown away by the people I met there. And every time you go to a meeting, the discussions, the conversations, meeting some of the social media docs in person, I was like, okay, there is a movement and I want to be a part of this. And that's, I think, where I first heard about the M Factor. Like, there's a documentary. I said, what are you talking about? There's like, yeah, there's a documentary about menopause. Okay. And that was the first eye-opening thing that I saw was the M Factor. Once I was able to screen that and I received the link to watch it, I was sobbing. Like, I couldn't stop after watching it. And I was like, this is it. This is my calling. And it's funny. I had the screening scheduled for November, but somebody else screened it prior to that here locally in Miami and invited me to be a part of it. And I was on the panel. I went, I watched it. That was my second time watching the documentary through and through. And you could hear the room was silent. Like, everybody was just like glued to the screen for the 56 minutes that it ran. We couldn't end the Q&A. It kept going. People had more and more and more questions. I went home that night and I said to my husband, I figured it out. And he's like, what are you talking about? I said, I know what I'm going to do with the rest of my life. This is it. He goes, really? I said, you have no idea of the impact this conversation, this documentary had on me and on the women. And how much need there is out there, how many questions we were being asked. And I still felt I could have stayed there for another hour or two answering more questions because it was just like this unknown was just opened up in front of their eyes. And everybody relates to that documentary so well because it's just done. It's like basically boots on the ground. They went out and they asked women, what are you feeling? What do you know? And what do you not know? And that was the beginning of this whole journey where it shifted what I was going to do. Because with OBGYN, once we're done with the obstetric side of it, basically you do office GYN, which is seeing patients once a year for their annual checkup and then moving on from there. And that's just not challenging enough for me. It's not stimulating to a point, to be honest with you. And I never really, because I love OB because you're operating, you're delivering, you're all over the place doing different things. But I couldn't go from that high intensity to just being like, an office provider like that. I just didn't see it in me. So this was a beautiful combination that I was able to kind of curate for myself so then that was in late 24, starting 2025, about a year ago, I started curating what my new practice is going to look like. And I started developing what I was going to do. And what started out as a consultation only kind of practice where I could really sit and talk to women about these topics turned into more than that because I realized women aren't going to want to come to me, get one thing done, and then go back and have a PAP done or go to a primary. I said, no, I can do it all. I can do this for women. I can be their primary care provider. We've been doing it. I'm just going to continue doing it and do better. And I can be their gynecologist and I can help them with the other components of their lifestyle modifications with, exercise, nutrition, and hormonal optimization. So it's not really only this, it's kind of a combination of all of the above. And that's how the practice was kind of made and envisioned. And I envisioned it and pretty much within 4 or 5 months, it was ready to go. And I started seeing patients part-time back in May of 25. And this year now, in the next 2 weeks, I will be there full-time seeing patients. Full-time is 3 days a week, by the way, because
you want to still be educating and traveling.
I still want to educate.
Yeah.
Exactly. So this is, how that was born and what it's morphed into, basically.
I'm so excited. Thank you so much for sharing that and sharing your passion and sharing kind of that moment, that kind of defining moment for you. Women ask me all the time, what is that one piece of advice about perimenopause and this transition that, you wish someone had whispered in your ear at the very beginning? What is something that you wish you would have known, Jila, walking into this transition and even on the back end into menopause?
I think it's what I would wish I would have known, I think back then, is that this is a normal part of being a woman. And it's the other part of the hormonal journey that we are all on from menarche all the way through reproduction and perimenopause and postmenopause. And each person's journey is different, and that there are things that can be done early on. And it's not all about hormones, yes or no. It's a combination of things. So it's lifestyle modification. It's, doing the right workouts and not the wrong ones, which are going to kind of set you back and cause more inflammation. What did I do? I was gaining weight. I wasn't feeling right. So I just kept pushing harder, which was the wrong thing to do. Now I'm like, well, that's why, I look puffed and inflamed because I was.
You were,
So
yeah. Talk to me about overdoing.
myself. That's my middle name is overdoing of everything. I'm like,
yeah. Is this the lesson for the ages, or was this the lesson for midlife for you as well?
it was another self-taught lesson. I've always been called extra. They're like, you're so extra. I said, well, if I'm extra, go find less. I don't know what to tell you, but this is me. An extra in both good and bad, I guess.
Oh, absolutely. It's a superpower. Let's be honest. And, it's a superpower until it's not.
Correct. Until it's too much.
It's
and
too
that's
much.
where you're learning, like, okay, I overdid that a little bit. I was of the mindset, eat less, work out more cardio, more this. And it's funny. I just made a post a couple of days ago about my whole workout regimen. And what I used to do is I would CrossFit. I was a marathoner. I did them all. Like whatever I could. I'm like, oh, marathon, I can do that. Okay, yeah. I ran 2 marathons, a couple of half marathons, That was part of my, Then I got into, CrossFitting. Okay, I did that too and maxed out on that. But I kept seeing so many people getting hurt. And I was like, I can't really afford to get hurt. I operate on a daily basis and I need to find something more sustainable. And then I kept weightlifting and running. That was my workout routine. And that's when I started puffing up and I looked just big and I was building muscle. I have a ton of muscle.
No, but you were just inflamed because your system was stressed.
And so what I do, I bought a treadmill, a Peloton treadmill, and then I bought a Stairmaster and I had a rower, all my garage, along with my free weights. And I was doing P90X. So Beachbody, all of the programs, I had them all. And I was going through them one by one. And it just kept getting worse and worse and worse. And I'm like, something
that's
is wrong.
The last thing. Your poor body is like, why are we doing all of this?
My body was like, lady, we're not doing this anymore. And you know what? I was actually not even eating enough to sustain what I was doing. And then, I have a good friend of mine here who is very into fitness and well-being, and that's like her whole career. And I asked her, I said, why? I see you lifting weights, but I also see you doing this other workout. Tell me about it. And it's, the Tracy Anderson method. And she started explaining it. And she goes, you just need to do it. That was her thing. She goes, just try it and see what you think. I said, okay, fine. I'm going to try it. First go at it. I didn't love it. I was like, I'm like one of those who, again, more is more.
No pain, no gain, Jila. Let's be honest. Let's call it. This has been the mindset, right? No pain, no gain.
No pain, no gain. And if I'm not sweating and if I'm not doing this,
I know. I really did not do well with Tracy Anderson's either because I'm like, this isn't hard enough.
It is, right? I was like, I'm not even like, and then I would see my friend post and I'm like, but she's like dripping sweat. What am I missing here? Is that like fake? I don't know. I don't get it. And, it took me a little bit. And then I was like, well, all right, and I talked to her again. And she was like, you need to try it. You need to try it. And it was right before COVID again. And I was like, all right, I'll try it again. And it was not the DVDs. It was like an online streaming thing. So it was a little different. And I remember I had a friend of mine who was in the same boat as I was like, listen, let's do this together so we hold each other accountable and we don't like flake out through it. She said, okay, fine, let's do it. And we did. Because of the buddy system partnering up together, we did. And I was like, that sucked. Like, we didn't even work out. Like, she goes, I know. I kind of want to go do a second workout. And we would. Like, crazy people. We would do that. We would do the Tracy workout. And then we'd do like a weightlifting workout just so we felt like we
you did
accomplished.
Something. Yeah.
And then fast forward like a month or two into it, I was like, I think we can back off on the second workout. Let's just really now commit to doing Tracy, like not. And that's where the magic kind of kicked in after a few months. And I started sweating like everybody else. And I was like, oh, there's something to this. And then right before COVID, I happened to be in New York and I'm like, oh my God, I'm going to go to the studio and see what that's all about. Well, that's really what cinched it for me was the studio experience. It's different. Like the room is heated, there's humidity being pumped in, like, and the floor bounces, I was like, that's why they're getting so like bounced so much. I'm like, I can't bounce like that. Something's wrong. No, they have a bouncy floor with springs underneath it. I was like, that makes sense. Okay. Basically, I was sold. Like after that one experience and the next week or two after that, I think we went into lockdown. And she was the only one with a built-in online platform already. So here I am at home with my home, TV, gym, workout stuff ready to go. And that's all I did for the next 4 to 6 months. And everything that I was feeling was starting to like calm down. Like that inflammation, it started to pare down. Now, I was still running. And that's when I spoke to one of her trainers and they're like, you don't really need to do that if you're already doing the method. Like you don't have to run. You can, but it may not serve the purpose you're trying to achieve, the goal you're trying to achieve. And again, that was now 6 years ago. So I've learned a lot just by going through it and what the method provided me, which is how to learn and listen to my body.
Yeah, I was going to say, what a valuable lesson.
It was so different than what I was used to. And I think we each need to find that works for us.
I agree. I think that is a lesson here.
Yeah.
That you're sharing is that one, you listen to your body. Like, yes, it wasn't the level of intensity that you had always pushed for, but your body was calling for a new level of support.
100%. And that's exactly where, you need to meet yourself and give yourself that grace, I think, in this transition phase is that, don't keep pushing old things that we know do not work or serve our bodies anymore. We really need to kind of shift the mindset. And again, this is part of the conversation I have with my patients when I meet with them. It's like, okay, what are you doing? What's working? What isn't? And how are we going to make it better?
This really leads me into, I feel like this may be one of those lessons, but if perimenopause or midlife was a teacher, what was the most important lesson it taught you about yourself?
I think it taught me a lot about what I can be capable of doing and resiliency because you don't know what you don't know. And listening to your body, it's talking to us. It's giving us the signals we need to tune into so then we can better serve ourselves. And that is something I talk about a lot is like your body is whispering little things to you. Like if your sleep is off all of a sudden, if you're becoming more testy with your kids and your husband or at work, this isn't just a stress of life anymore. This is something's going on and your body's giving you the little signals. So like, listen. So learning to listen to your body and within yourself, I think is really one of the key takeaways.
I love that. I agree. I mean, I think it is really about listening to those little signals, but also what's going to drive resilience for you.
Yeah.
As you've been in this journey and you've been navigating, and really, if anything, it's just been this beautiful learning experience. What do you think and what do you hope is going to change in regards to the conversation around perimenopause and menopause in medicine? But also, not only in medicine, let's start there, but in society or even in our own minds. Like, where does it need to change in ourselves?
That is such a great question. There's so many different angles to it, because it's within ourselves, within society, and then the medical community. Within ourselves, I think we need to remove taboos and shame that this is something bad, we're getting old, and we're of no use to anybody anymore, which is really, I hear a lot here, especially in Miami, other different cultures. We're very multicultural here.
Which I love.
Me too. Like I'm, Middle Eastern, but to be here with South and Central Americans and, all different varieties of people, it's amazing for me to hear their perspectives on this because I know from my perspective, it's like, oh, we don't talk about it. To understand
we don't talk about it. Yeah.
You guys don't either. And I was like, oh, so we're all on the same page. So let's fix that. Like, this is not okay. We are a lot better than this. And we have so much more to give back. So I love having women dig into that sense of self and well-being, because then they like kind of recreate themselves and become like the next best versions per se. So that is like the within. Then in terms of society, having partners, husbands, work, atmosphere, understand what is happening, what's going on, and how do we support this? This isn't just like, oh, she's lost it or she's kind of crazy. Like, that needs to shift and change. Okay. This is a normal part of women going through their journey as women, per se. You know, if it was men, it would be given a name, or it would be given a whole thing, and it would be okay. Women, it's like, oh, she's having a moment. Oh, and again, it starts way earlier, when we go through puberty and we're having our period. Oh, she's that time of the month. Leave her alone. No, we need to change all of it. It's normal. It needs to be celebrated. It is what it is. It's part of us just being who we are and being able to, whether we choose to or not, procreate. That's all our chemistry. That's our biology, basically. So then that's the second part. And then the third part is providers, healthcare providers being on board with what's happening, educating themselves so they can help provide care on all different levels. So it shouldn't just be the OBGYNs who are frontline providers. It's OBGYNs. It's your internal medicine doctor. It's your family practitioners. It's a cardiologist who understands why that LDL is going up and that they don't put them on medication right away. Maybe that's something as part of the conversation later, but right off the bat, like had I gone to somebody, a cardiologist, they were like, oh, you need a statin because your LDL is elevated. No, actually, I don't. I need to see what's going on hormonally. And then if it doesn't self-correct, then we can talk about it, check my other cardiac risk factors and go from there. But again, these conversations need to be had across the board in medicine. It shouldn't just be the job of the OBGYN or the PCP because it's too much. And there's too many. Listen, we're over 50% of the population. And you don't have enough providers out there to do this. So I think a lot of this is shifting and changing. I've spoken to younger doctors coming out of training who are those frontline docs, and they're well versed in this. And it's really giving me hope for the future of women that we're going to be doing great. Like in 5 to 10 years, we're going to have this all down where my daughter, when she goes through this, not only, she's going to be fine because she knows all of this.
She's got you.
They hear my boys and my daughter. They're like, oh gosh, okay, yes, we know all of this, Mom, we know. But everybody else is going to be that well versed in it, where it's going to be just as easy as it was for my mom, way back in the late 90s, where she was like, oh yeah, you're in menopause, take hormones, move on. Like that's how it should go back to be.
Yeah, I agree. I think what you pointed to is that this is a whole body transition and it needs to be treated as such. Cardiologists need to be aware. Neurologists need to be aware, endocrinologists. Across the board, it's not just up to a few providers to be the gatekeepers to helping women. Agreed.
It's a whole team effort, I think, because the more it makes me really happy, even in this short while that I've been doing this, where I have a patient and she has a cardiologist from before. And I put her on hormone therapy, and then she sees her cardiologist and she comes by. She goes, oh no, he was on board with what you started me on. It really makes me happy. And I'm like, okay, word's getting out. All right, we're doing good. We're moving the needle per se, even though, albeit small, but it is moving in the right direction.
Exactly. And that's what we just got to do. We got to keep moving forward in the right direction.
Mm-hmm.
I would love to know, it's kind of one of my last questions, is what is your, let's say, perimenopause, menopause superpower? So the strength or insight that you gained that you never would have discovered otherwise.
It makes me laugh, but I really didn't think I could turn into a different version of myself, to be honest with you. I never saw this other side of myself. Public speaking, podcasting. This wasn't part of my genre at all. It wasn't in my comfort zone. It just kind of happened. And I love a good challenge every now and then. And the first time someone's like, would you want to come and talk about this? It's a small group, and I said, yeah, why not? And I was nervous as heck, right? I'm like, why did I say yes? Like, I'm a yes person. I'm like, I say yes to everybody. And then I'm like, why did I do that? Like, do I really? Now I'm nervous about it. I start overthinking things. And if you go back and tell me two years ago that this is where I was going to be today, I wouldn't have believed you. And so that, I think, is my superpower, that, I am getting across to people and people want to hear more. And my husband, my kids laugh. They're like, "Are you sure about that?" I'm like, "I think so. I think they like me." And they're like, "Yes, okay." But I still love seeing my patients in person, because that's what gives me, the ambition, the drive, the motivation to keep doing what I'm doing, because I'm also helping people on a daily basis, one by one, hand holding them through this journey. They have my number. They can text me or call me whenever with any little question, because I don't want them to feel alone on this journey. I'm like, I literally got a second phone just for my patients.
Oh.
That way, they have direct access to me with any little question, because it may be, worrisome question to them, but it's nothing. I can ease their mind within seconds. So that's really, these are the little, the things I really didn't see within myself, because I think of 25 years of just doing deliveries and being on call. You're on that hamster wheel. You're just going, going, going. And I never really looked outside at other opportunities. Hey, do you want to be this or that? I was just like, no, I'm here for my patients. I have things to do. And I'm raising a family of 3 kids, and, I have a whole household to run. So no, I don't have time for extracurricular things. But now I think timing for me worked out, where all 3 kids, they're all within a year of each other. So once one started college, and the second and the third, I became an empty nester within 2.5 years. And it gave me that opportunity to kind of look beyond and say, hey, I think there's something else I can do out there. And that, but I would have never thought that had you told me that 2 years ago. I would have said, I think you're making things up.
Wow. It's amazing what 2 years can do.
Yeah.
And I feel like you've done a great job of really breaking this down. But how do you want to be a part of the changing narrative for the next generation of women, even for girls in puberty? How does that look for you? Not just midlife.
I love for them, to understand is what their bodies are doing and how to work best with it and not against it. Because we are so quick to dispense medications, where honestly, I've even shifted my mindset on that. Is like, hey, maybe if I can switch your diet around a little bit and let's work with that, some of your symptoms may improve and it may not be as bad as you think. Like, with PCOS, our go-to was birth control pill and metformin. And we would, they would get better, but are we really changing it on a cellular level, which we now even know there's so much more to PCOS and endometriosis. It's not what we thought. So I love being able to shift mindsets. And that's what I have found, for me is like, think outside the box. Like, don't just ask questions. Certain things, somebody said this to me and this really stayed with me. It was like, we tell women after delivery, 6 weeks postpartum, you're back to go to regular activities. How do we know it's 6 weeks? It's random.
Who made this up?
We don't know. Literally, somebody's asked me that. I'm like, well, it's in the book. They're like, yeah, but who said that? I'm like, I don't know. It's in the book. Yeah, but what? Some people are better at 5. Others need 8 or 10. I don't know. So that's where I was like, oh my God, I need to stop being so concrete. And I always say medicine is not black or white. Medicine is a lot of gray zones. We have a few black or whites, but most of the time, especially with women's health, there's a lot of gray zones, and you need to be able to think outside the box. So with the younger population, I've shifted, and it's funny. My practice is really more for midlife after reproduction, but a lot of the moms are bringing their daughters. They're like, no, we see value in this for them. I'm like, but I will never deliver to their babies. They're like, that's okay. Take care of them now. Get them on the right path. That way, later, when they want to have kids, they're ready to go. They go have their kids and they come back to you. And I said, okay, well, that's like a very forward thinking, mom who can see the value in that. But I think that's really where it's at, is lifestyle. It's all about that. That's like the base that needs to be solidified. even in my 20-year-old, I'm like, are you guys sleeping enough? Are you taking, your supplements? Are you being outside? Are you moving? Are you doing this, that? And they don't, they're not home with me because they're away at college, but they're seeing it, and I see them implementing it into their own lifestyles. So I think that's really at the core of it, because fast forward, they're going to be great when they go through reproduction and they have their kids and everything. And then they're going to kind of slide right into peri and menopause and not even have all these hurdles we had to jump through.
Yeah, I agree. Agreed. Jila, honey, it's been the greatest pleasure. Where would you love for us to come and find more about you?
I love my social media. I'm on Instagram a lot, and I, put a lot of information out there and fun things as well. So on my social media, Dr. Jila Senemar on Instagram, and then on my website at jilamd.com, I put a lot of resources and, events and things like that I have planned for the upcoming year.
Oh, I love it. Jila, honey, it's been such a pleasure. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you so much for having me, especially on the first day of the new year. What a way to kick it off.
Yes. Thank you so much for watching. Now, if you found this video helpful, give it a thumbs up and share your thoughts in the comments. And if you are ready to learn more about perimenopause and how to navigate with a lot of ease and grace, be sure to subscribe to this channel so that you can join our community. Don't forget to share this video with someone that you love, that you know is navigating the perimenopause journey as well, because they deserve to feel their best too. See you in the next video.